Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Behind the Closed Doors. And today it's the workshop Gels. Now this is a totally new workshop. Now of course I incorporate gels in many other workshops, like for example smoke, glamour and fashion to the max. And today it's actually because a lot of people ask me like, hey Frank, we really like those parts with gels, but how do you? Or how can you create something that's a little bit more extreme? Or how can you combine gels? How can you make duotonings and whatnot more? So I decided to do a whole workshop about gels. Now you might think they're just colors, right? Well, not really. They take away light, they color your light of course. You have correction gels like CTOs, but today it's more about the creative part. But I have a question for you. When you use gels, how do you incorporate the gray card or the color checker? Do you do the color checker before you use the gels or after? Pause the video, answer the question below. Okay guys, did you know the answer? The answer varies just a little bit. Now when you use high density gels like these, this is a blue one, a green one, a red one. These are pretty large and they're very dense, so that means that they get you highly saturated colors and well, they take away a lot of light, so you have to remeter. But when you use the color checker passport, you do it actually when these gels are not on the strobe. For the very simple reason, you want the perfect base to start with. Now as soon as you do, for example, a color checker when the gels are already in front of your strobe, that actually means that you're making that neutral. So that takes away a little bit of the whole idea of using gels, right? If you want to make it neutral, don't use gels. Now there's also of course another kind of gels, and those are CTO gels. Those make it possible that when you shoot, for example, with tungsten light, like a light bulb, and you have your strobes, there's a different color temperature. So your tungsten, for example, is 2800 degrees Kelvin, and your strobe is in the 5500, 5000 range. You use a CTO gel to lower the color temperature of your strobe to mimic that of a tungsten light bulb. And now you have two light sources that have the same color temperature approximately. At that point, you use the color checker, of course, when you have the CTO gel in front of your strobe, for the very simple reason you want neutral colors. Now, you might wonder, hey Frank, but what if I want that tungsten light quality back, that nice warm tint? My advice is very simple. Always start with that base. So use your color checker passport to get a correct neutral base. And then when you want to add that little bit of warmth back from your tungsten lighting, very simply use a profile, for example, in alien skin exposure, luminar, DxO, whatever you want to use for tinting. Now, the main advantage of this is that it doesn't matter under which conditions you shoot. Fluorescent tubes, tungsten lighting, strobes, outside, cloudy, sunny, it doesn't matter. As long as you use that color checker passport, you will have the perfect starting point. And then every single preset you use will have the same results depending on if you shoot outside, inside, cloudy or whatnot. So that's why I always am a big advocate of using that x-rite color checker passport, even when using gels. But when you use these babies, don't use a color checker passport before, do use the color checker passport before you put them on, because otherwise you just make them neutral and these are just way too much fun. Okay, let's start the workshop. And of course, we're going to take you behind the scenes and I'm going to explain every setup after we shot them. Let's go.
I'm flying like a cannonball. Yeah. What if I'm just concealing that I'm waiting for a star to fall? Won't you do me a favor? Won't you hit me up, baby? All this time I'm looking at my telephone, 'cause I'm thinking of your hands and the way you made them dance on me, on me. Make a wish, take your pick, let me out before I slip. Take your pick, hit it. Dynamite, you just blew my mind right now, right now. One more night, baby, come and show me how, show me how. Yeah, yeah. You just blew my mind right now. You just blew my mind right now. Nothing ain't got no purpose. It's like I threw the dice and lost it all. But when I'm around you, I get a bit nervous, like in a plane before it's taking off. Make a wish, take your pick, let me out before I slip. Take your pick, take your pick. Yeah. Make a wish, take your pick, let me out before I slip. Take your pick, take your pick. Hit. Dynamite, you just blew my mind right now, right now.
Okay, in the first setup I actually try to show the students that when you have a shadow on a white wall, you can actually use strobes with, of course, color gels to literally just light up that shadow. It's a question you get a lot when you work with gels, and it's a really simple trick. White wall, make sure that you have enough light on your model and you see the shadow, and just use the strobe with a color gel on that shadow. It's really simple. After that we changed it up a little bit and just turned the strobe around and gave the model more like a blue face and a red accent light. And I really like that, but with the white backdrop it actually takes away a little bit of the fun, because the white backdrop also gets blue and somehow it just doesn't click for me. So we pulled down the curtains, made it black, and at that point the image just popped out a little bit more. So I like to have that contrast in. And you know that from my work, I like flat lighting, but most of the time, like 99% of the time, I really lean towards the more high contrast stuff. So let's go to the second set.
You and me, everything that we've been through has made us strong. You won't believe we've had our gray, but somewhere there's a light inside of us. It shows the way. Not looking for no heaven or gold, 'cause I got you. I got you. Don't wanna show us off, but you're my all that I need. Trying to sugarcoat, but I'm flying so high. I don't even know if I'm coming down. You rock my boat when you hold me so tight. The world just disappears in front of my eyes. I'm telling you why, this ain't no madness. The smoke and the mirrors are memories now. The sun's gone down like a river rushing way up above. This ain't no sugar-coated love. This ain't no sugar-coated love. This ain't no sugar-coated love. I'll stay in bed.
Second set you could call the bunny set. Well, she was wearing a bunny head, so bunny mask. So with this setup it was all about creating a certain look with gels and a certain atmosphere. So I used lens flare and literally explained like how important angles are to get that lens flare. And this is something that you may or not may realize, but lens flare, it looks incredibly simple, but it's actually pretty hard, because you have to make sure that the angle you're shooting under is exactly the right angle. So the light has to hit that sensor straight on, actually the lens, and make sure that you get the lens flare that you want. If you want too much, if you get too much, just change your angle a little bit. One of the things that I always tell people is make sure that it's aimed at your lens. Now, when you make your composition, make sure that you see the lens flare, that you see the strobe, and then just move your camera a little bit, that it's just out of the frame, and you will see this beautiful lens flare in. So it's a really handy trick, and it doesn't only work with gels, of course, but also on location when you use the sun or whatever you want to use. Lens flares are just awesome, guys. It's really nice, but if it doesn't succeed the first time, Remember, it looks simple, but it's incredibly tricky to get it exactly the way that you want it. Sometimes it's too much, sometimes it's too little. Just find it in between. So, and that's what we do in the workshop, of course, explain exactly how you get it. So visit the workshop.
Standing at the door, I'm on the way. A million things I guess that I should say, but I am done. Yeah, I am done. Letting go of all my heavy load. I waited for the moment to unfold. Nobody's gonna make me feel I'm going down. Oh, I'm doing alright, I'm doing okay. I stand up and take it as I go. I'm doing alright, I'm doing okay. Stronger than ever. Baby, it's not a shade of mine. All in all, I'm doing fine. Doing alright, I'm doing okay.
Okay, in the next set, now you know that with classical lighting we use flags, right? But you can also use flags in a different way. They're not really flags at that point, but they are something that you put in the lightway between your model and your strobe. So in other words, when you use flags, you have your strobe over here, you have your model here, and you place your flags over here to get that really nice harsh line. When you place your flags over there, it's a little bit softer. Now, when you exchange your flags for gels and you place the gels really close to your model, you get that really distinct line. So in this case, we used a blue gel on top and, a red gel on top and a blue gel on the bottom. And if you see the video, you actually see that we don't use a boom stand for this. I actually have two students, one on one side, one on the other, holding that gel. Because when you use a boom stand, the problem is, of course, you have that line. So you could get a shadow line on your model. You don't want that. So when two people just hold it together, and you can actually just steer them like, okay, make it a little bit tighter, make it a little bit looser, or just change the angle. So you can really play with it. But the key ingredient is strobe far away, gels really close to the model, and then the model. So you get that really nice distinct line. Again, this is a really tricky setup. It looks incredibly simple. When the students shoot it, it's incredibly simple because the model is sitting. This is one of the sets where you actually see my model sitting, because if she's standing and she just moves a little bit, everything falls apart. So with classical lighting, with flags, and with this, we have the model sitting on a chair and just tell her, don't move, because every single movement you will see in that line play on her face. So you want to make sure that that's perfect. Okay, let's go to the next set, and that's a full body set.
We should still have fun, though we say we're done. 'Cause I just wanna get done with you. Kinda last time I can call you mine. Once more, then I swear we are through. We should still have fun, though we say we're done. 'Cause I just wanna get done with you. Kinda last time I can call you mine. Once more, then I swear we are through.
Now in this set we went a little bit more overboard, trying to fill the whole scene with a floodlight with red. Now she's wearing a red dress, and then the combination of a red gel with a red dress can be a little bit tricky. And I will tell you exactly why in a second. Now we use one beauty dish on our model to make sure that her face is properly lit. We use one snoot on the back with a blue gel to make sure that that background, the luster light backdrop, really shines out. And then the red floodlight from the side. Now, why is that red floodlight so incredibly tricky? For the very simple reason, when you use color gels, let me first start when you don't use color gels. Let's say this is your color space. Everything works fine, right? But this is the maximum color space. When you shoot with normal strobes and you use your color checker passport for correct color balance, you are in this area. So you can tweak your saturation a little bit, you can tweak your curves a little bit, but you're actually hardly ever hitting that side. So no channels will clip and it all looks pretty okay, unless of course you pull that saturation all the way up, but don't do that. So you're still in that area. Now when you use color gels, and exactly when you use color gels, for example red on a red dress, what happens, if this is your maximum color space and this is your maximum red point, you are already really close to that maximum red point. So that means that if in retouching, you for example just push up your curves just a little bit, you will actually start to clip that red channel. So when you retouch something like this, it's important to realize what colors are on the danger zone. So when you do curves now and you just want to have a little bit of more contrast, it's very wise to do the green channel, the blue channel, and leave the red channel alone. And in Photoshop you can actually select your channels per curve. So that's a really tricky way, that's a really easy way to do that. But remember, when you shoot color gels, especially red on red, it starts to break up really fast. And one extra advice, when you do stuff like this, make sure you're in a 16 bits color space where you work in. So mostly it will be Adobe RGB, but make sure, absolutely sure, that you're working on a 16 bits files. If you do this on 8-bit, it will literally just fall apart under your arms. It will be really bad. So that was that set. And we actually, after this set, we did a small extra set. And we're going to show you that in a moment. It's a little bit of magic. Okay, this is the final set, or this was the final set, and we have this long, it's a little bit of a coat, and it always reminds me of a wizard. So we asked Claudia, okay, put that coat on and make some wizardy movements or whatever. Now, how did I get the final shot, which you see here? Of course, you saw the video. Now, what we did is we actually used one strobe straight aimed at the camera. So we have one beauty dish on the model. We have, of course, still that blue gel on the backdrop, and one strobe actually aiming towards my camera. This is an incredibly powerful and really cool technique. Now sometimes it happens that you're on a location, you want some reds in there, you want some red smoke maybe, but you can't use a smoke machine, and in all honesty, if you have your light set up from the front, there's actually no room in the back to put your lighting. So how do you get that red hue in? Well, you can of course do it in Photoshop with duotoning, but hey, Photoshop, you would like to do it in real life, right? Now remember that story about lens flare. It's actually light hitting your lens and hitting your sensor and literally destroying your image. In this case, a good way of destroying your image. But in essence, a lens flare you don't want in your image because, well, it destroys the image. It takes out your blacks, it infects with all kinds of strikes. You don't want it. That's why modern lenses use, for example, a sun hood, coated lens element, so you don't get that lens flare. They fight the lens flare from every single angle. For us, lens flare is actually really cool. So when you use a really old lens that doesn't have that coating, you get those lens flares really easily. And this is where this whole technique is based on. You can do it with a modern lens, but the angle is a little bit more tricky than when you do it with an old lens. In this case I used the G Master from Sony, 24-70 2.8. It's a really good coated lens. It's really difficult to get good lens flares with it. But because we have the strobe so close to our camera, I can literally just pump up the volume to full power, and at that point, trust me, you will get lens flare. The cool thing about this technique is that you can literally steer the lens flare. So in this case we had it from the bottom because I wanted to make that kind of magic with stuff on the bottom. But you can also put it on the side, on the top, on that side, and maybe in the corner, wherever you want it. Now you will see Anouk breathing on the lens. She actually does it a little bit like this. So she comes really close. And what you see is there's a little bit of a fog effect. And that's all. Now it's gone. So you have to time this. So first you focus, then somebody breathes on your lens, you see everything fogging up, and at that point you wait until you see, like, okay, now I can see it clearly, and then you press, and you get this beautiful, almost like smoke effect. So that's, and it's a trick that always works great. Also when you do it live, people just love it when you get somebody out of the audience, can you breathe on my lens? And it's just hilarious. But it gives you, in the end, it's not a joke, it gives you a completely different image. Okay, that was it for today. I hope you liked it. If you like what we do, again, subscribe to our channel, leave comments below, and of course smash that like button because we really like that. Now, tomorrow there will be a very, very short behind closed doors because tomorrow is Hell Portrait. Tomorrow in the vlog, I'm going to explain to you what Hell Portrait is and why we think it's incredibly important, and you guys should also do it next year or maybe this year if you can still manage it. For today, I'm signing off. I still have to retouch the images. You already saw them, but I still have to retouch them. See you again next time. And if you have any questions or remarks how we can make these vlogs better for you guys, just leave them in the comments below. We really like to read your comments because the more comments we get, the higher we get in the ranking in YouTube. So even if you just say, hey, I love this video, just put it down there. Get those comments rolling. Thank you so very much, guys. See you again next time. Bye-bye.